Sukiwotu and good evening, everyone. Welcome to MSPS Dhamma Sharing Online. This weekly event is jointly organized by MSPS, Odita, Sambodi, and supported by TBCM. Today is Tuesday, 3rd November 2020, and the time now is 8:30. Since there's new participants, we shall do the etiquette for please display your name for easy identification. Make sure your audio is muted at all times. If you wish to ask a question, you may type your question at the chat box. Or to ask verbally, you may raise your hand, unmute and talk. Please turn off your microphone after finish asking. One person to speak at one time. During guided meditation, please on your video so Bhante can see your progress. And the meeting room will be locked. MSPS is fortunate to have with us Bhante Adhibalo, better known as Phra Goh. Bhante was born on July 14, 1985. Yet his ordination, the Thai Dhamma Youth sect at Santi Forest Monastery in Johor, Malaysia, in 2008. Today's talk is very important for Buddhists. It tells us why we are stuck in this samsara. After this, Bhante will be leading the homage to the Buddha and taking off 5 precepts for Buddhists. Now let us compose our mind, put our palms together and welcome Bhante.
Okay, thank you, Terence, for the introduction. So now we are doing the opening chant. Yeah. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Three refuges: Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Kamesu Michachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Musawada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Suramiraya Majapamadatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so good evening, brothers and sisters. Today we are starting this new series called Dependent Origination. This is actually requested by requested by Terence during one of our topics on seclusion. We were talking about what is right seclusion and wrong seclusion. And scripture, this Mikajala Sutta, mentioned about this cycle, this process called dependent origination. So he wanted me to cover more, so I'll cover in detail for this series. So I do not know how many lectures it will take. It's quite a deep and profound topic. So normally this isn't for beginners. This is more philosophical, right? And like can you see in the picture, right? There's this Tibetan drawing of this Lord of Death called this. Some call it Yama, some call it Mara, and this deity is holding this wheel, the cycle of birth and death. So in this particular wheel, I was sort of introduced to this when I was in secondary school. My dad was practicing Tibetan Buddhism, and he brought back this called a poster, a tanka, this drawing, and hanged in one of the doors. So whenever we leave the room, whenever we open the door, we'll have to see this. So either we're entering samsara or exiting samsara. So it's kind of like a reminder. So the outermost rim of the wheel is actually the 12 links of dependent origination. So this is what we are going to discuss today. The middle portion of the wheel, the most center, the core, talking about the three defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion, represented by three animals, followed by the outer ring, the 6 realms, right? And the bigger portion of the pie is the 6 realms in details, right? From the heavenly beings, the Ashura realms, human realm, animal, ghost, and the hell realm. So total there are 6. So this is in short, right, for this picture. So today we are going to discuss just on this dependent origination. Okay, next slide. Okay, because it's such a deep topic, why is it important? Why is it important? Right, so Terence mentioned it is important for Buddhists. So it's mentioned in this Sutta, Vera Sutta, and of course a few other suttas that can confirm that, okay, the above is talking about there are 4 factors, a stream entry is endowed. So the 4 factors is having faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. There's 3 factors, and observing the 5 precepts well. So whatever we chanted earlier on, if you can really follow it well, then you have fulfilled these 4 factors of stream entry. So what is a stream entry, right? So stream entry is like such a big deal in the Theravada community, because stream entry is a person who has a glimpse of this Nibbana, a glimpse of this truth. They've tasted spiritual happiness and they have no more doubt in the teachings, right? They are headed towards enlightenment. So it is said maximum 7 lifetimes they will be reborn. So if they're more hardworking, can be lesser than 7 lifetimes. So 7 lifetimes and not reborn in the lower realms. That means it's either human or higher, right? Can be the heavenly beings, the deities. So this is the so-called benefits of stream entry. So like everyone is trying to aim for that, right? And so after attaining this so-called stream entry, right, they are supposed to this noble method that he has rightly seen and rightly ferreted out through discernment. So it is a sort of requirement for a stream enterer to understand this thing. So what is this kind of doctrine that he has to understand? There's a case where a noble disciple of the noble ones notices. So number 1, when this is, that is. And number 2, from the arising of this comes the arising of that. And number 3, when this isn't, that isn't. And number 4, from the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. So it sounds very ambiguous. right? So basically, it's actually talking about the Four Noble Truths. The first one is talking about the first noble truth, right? What are the things, what are the cards at hand? And number two, what causes these cards to be at play? So that's the second noble truth. And number three, right, the cessation. And number four, the path that leads to the cessation. So basically, it's talking about Four Noble Truths. And dependent origination is something like an extrapolation of the Four Noble Truths and making it sound more profound. And today we are going to cover what is this profound thing. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the profound part. So there are two orders. So there's a forward order and a reverse order. Total, there's 12, right? Forward order 12 and the reverse order 12. So I'm going to go through this forward order. So the forward order is basically what causes suffering, right? The first two noble truths that we discussed earlier. Okay, so starting from number one, from ignorance as a requisite condition come fabrications, right? So in the previous session, we were talking about karma, the series on karma. So karma is this fabrications, can be mental, verbal, or physical. So these are the karmas. And number two, from fabrications as a requisite condition comes consciousness. So it is through the karma, then the awareness sort of springs up. And from consciousness as a requisite conditions come name and form. So when there is awareness, then you are aware of mind and matter, right? So consciousness is part of name, part of mind. Likewise is this fabrications, right? So basically they cover sort of 2/5 of the name and form. From name and form, as a requisite condition come the sixth sense media. So this nama rupa, name and form, right, will give rise to this sixth sense basis. So basically, it's our senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So in the sciences we learned about the five senses. So in Buddhism, we talk about sixth sense, right? So don't be confused with the ESP, the sixth sense. The sixth sense in Buddhism refers to the thinking, right? When we think of something that is a form of experience, likewise, whatever we see is a kind of experience, right? And so on. And from the sixth sense media as a requisite condition comes contact. You contact with the sense stimuli, the object. What is contact? Contact is the three things. When there is your sense media, the organs, and when there is the external stimuli, that means like the screen in front of you or the sound that you're hearing. So these are the external stimuli. And because there's the I and there's the form, I consciousness arise. So this is how it's defined, right? And when these three things meet, when there's I, the object, and the attention from seeing, this is called contact. Three things, that is called contact. And when contact, from contact as a requisite condition comes feeling. So when there's contact of these three things, feelings will arise. So what are the feelings? Feelings is these pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings. And from feeling as a requisite condition comes craving. So craving is actually our self-inflicted kind of suffering, right? It's our reaction to the feeling. So whenever we have pleasant feeling, most probably we'll react with greed. And when there's an unpleasant feeling, we will react with aversion or hatred. And when there's a neutral feeling, we will react with delusion. Right? We believe everything is okay, still, and peaceful. We'll live forever. No, we won't die. We won't get sick. So this is the delusion. And from craving, as a requisite condition, comes clinging or sustenance. Okay, and from clinging, sustenance as a requisite condition becomes becoming. So from craving arises becoming. What is this becoming? Right. So becoming, there's some people interpret as ego, our sense of self, sense of I. Why do I become? Right. There's you become part of this world, and from becoming as a requisite comes birth. So when there is the ego is present, then this ego will experience birth, aging, sickness, and death. Right? So from birth as a requisite condition, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, and the rest of the suffering. All right, so these are the 12 links. So this is the forward order. Forward order. So traditionally, when a person chants this, normally this can be found also in the funeral chants, right? The monks also chant this in the funeral chants. It's found in this Matika chanting as well. Okay, next. Reverse order. Okay, so from the reverse order is the opposite, not from 12 to 1, but same thing, 1 to 12, but without certain things, then the second link won't exist. Right? If the first is gone, second disappear, from the second gone, the third disappears, so on and so forth. So it's a chain reaction. Right? So from remainderless fading and cessation of that very ignorance comes cessation of fabrication. From cessation of fabrication comes cessation of consciousness. From cessation of consciousness comes the cessation of name and form. Right? Earlier on, I didn't define name and form. Name and form is nama rupa. There are 5 things. So name, mind is basically you have feelings, perception, fabrication, or they call it mental formations, and number 4, consciousness. So these are the 4 things. And form is actually the 4 elements, right? In the meditation, we always talk about this 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, and water. Anything that make up this shape, right? There's something tangible, then it's called the form. And from the cessation of name and form comes the cessation of the 6 sense media. 6 sense media means the 6 sense bases. From cessation of 6 sense media comes cessation of contact. From cessation of contact comes cessation of feeling. From cessation of feeling comes a cessation of craving. From the cessation of craving comes cessation of clinging. From cessation of clinging comes cessation of becoming. So the I will disappear. From cessation of becoming comes cessation of birth, cessation of death, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, and the rest of suffering. All right, so this is the reverse order. All right, and we are going to move on to the next slide. So this is trying to explain in detail what are the 12 things that we were talking about. Right, so earlier on I briefly described, so I'm going to describe according to this Paticca Samuppada Vibhanga Sutta. It's an analysis of this dependent origination. Okay, so what is aging and death? So this one is starting from bottom up, that means from 12 to 1. Right, so we talk about aging and death first. So whatever aging, decrepitude, low brokenness, graying, wrinkling, decline of life force, weakening of faculties, and these various beings of this or that group of beings That is called aging. I believe aging, we all know, right? We know how many years on earth already, so we know what is aging. And what is death? Whatever deceasing, passing away, breaking up, disappearance, dying, death, completion of time, breaking up of the aggregates, casting off of the body, interruption of the life faculty of the various beings in this or that group of beings. That is called death. So the Buddha is very accommodating. So he doesn't just talk about human beings. He talks about various group of beings. That includes heavenly beings, hungry ghosts, and so on. And what is birth? Number 11, right? Whatever birth, taking birth, descent, coming to be, coming forth, appearance of aggregates. So interesting, appearance of aggregates. So in the meditation, we always talk about birth and death. When you breathe in and out, there's always birth and death taking place. So birth and death can mean a very micro kind of birth and death from these sensations appearing and disappearing of the elements, the sensations of the density of the air, the temperature, and so on and so forth. So the various sensations change, so there's always appearing of the aggregates. So this could be the micro level, and it can also mean a physical birth, an actual literal birth, taking birth. We talk about descent. So what is descent? In the previous episode of Karma, during the Q&A session, we talk about descent. So there are 3 criteria of birth. In Theravada Buddhism, 3 factors need to fulfill. First, the parents need to be together for their intercourse. And number 2, the season must be correct, right? The period or whatever it is must be correct. And number 3, the Gandhabba must be present. So a Gandhabba is an unseen being. So these 3 factors, when come to play, is called descent, right? It's called birth. So when this unseen being sort of takes descent into the womb, then birth, conception happens. So this is the Theravada understanding, but in Theravada Buddhism, they never mention the time frame, never mention how long does this Gandhabba, this unseen being, wander around and so on. Yeah? In modern Theravada Buddhism, however, they will mention it is immediate, instantaneous, almost immediate. Yeah. Okay, so the acquisition of this sense media of that various beings in this or that group of beings, that is called birth. So this is the definition of birth. Okay, next. Okay, and number 10. And what is becoming, right? So we talk about becoming. There are 3 kinds of becoming: sensual becoming, form becoming, and formless becoming. This is called becoming. So now when we are operating in this world, we are in this sensual world, sensual becoming. And the form becoming is something like in the form levels of concentration. If you want to take it literally, it's in the Brahma worlds, and same thing, the formless becoming, that is the formless concentrations that will be in the formless worlds, right? So these are the 3 kinds of becomings. And if we were to do concentration meditation, right, if a person is entering the various levels of concentration, they are actually sort of when there's clinging, right, clinging to this concentration, then this is a kind of becoming. We are attached to the different levels of concentration. So it doesn't have to be a literal birth in that particular realm. So when a person sort of enjoys the senses, that is becoming in the sensual world. And if a person does concentration meditations, the jhanic meditations, then they become in that jhanic state of mind. So that is the three kinds of becoming. And what is clinging? These four are clingings: sensuality clinging, view clinging, precept and practice clinging, and a doctrine of self clinging. This is called clinging, right? So earlier on we talked about this stream entry, right? So stream entry, so-called, has to overcome three fetters, Fetters, three chains that bind us to this samsara, right? So precept and practice clinging. Now, view clinging is one of them. So a person has right view, then they won't cling, at least temporarily. So this is the first one. And the second one, clinging to precept and practice. And the third one is clinging to an identity view. Right? So these are the three kinds. And sensuality clinging is clinging to this greed and hatred. That will be harder to let go. Right? So it is said non-returner anagami, that is the third stage of sainthood, then they will completely overcome greed and hatred, right? So these are the four kinds of clinging. So if a person does become a stream enterer, at least they remove three of them, reduce three kinds of clinging, right? So how does these three come into play, right? So if a person has a glimpse of nibbana, that means they still has lots of greed and hatred, and they totally rely on sensuality, right, for happiness, then very hard to see this dependent origination. But if a person were to practice non-greed, non-hatred, have lots of this loving kindness, think of impermanence all the time, and when they go against the stream of desire, and they will experience a spiritual kind of happiness that is actually Four Noble Truths in experience, right? When they practice these right thoughts, right? They're practicing the Eightfold Path, and when the desire reduces, that is the third Noble Truth. They will reach certain peace and happiness. So this is the last two Noble Truths. And the first two Noble Truths is the reaction to the sense stimuli which causes stress, right? When whatever we see, hear, smell, think, taste, and touch, we react with greed and hatred. This will cause our mind to be more restless, more selfish and whatever not. So these are the Four Noble Truths in play. So if a person does practice this non-greed and non-hatred, they will let go of this clinging, at least for a short time or various periods of time in their life. They will get to experience this lack of clinging, and dependent origination will come into play. At least they won't understand it theoretically, but at least they will experience it. So this is an experiential kind of sequential events. Okay, so how about the number 8? What is craving? Right. Wow, they mentioned there are 6. These 6 are classes of craving. Craving for forms, craving for sounds, craving for smells, craving for taste, tactile sensations, craving for ideas. These are called craving. So basically, you have greed or hatred towards the 6 senses, whatever you see, smell, think, taste, hear, and touch. Okay, so today we'll just cover here, because this is the practical aspect from craving onwards all the way down to this birth and death suffering, right? So this is the part we'll cover, because now it's 9 o'clock. We are going to stop the theoretical presentation, and we are opening up the floor to questions. All right, so I see some questions. Okay, somebody asked, Is Gandhabba a life force or consciousness, or is it another kind of beings? The life cycle or temporarily reborn being. Okay, so again, this has to do with context. The Gandhabba, if you take it at face value, that would be a kind of being in the four heavenly kings. The realm of the four heavenly kings, there's a certain race called Gandhabas. So this could be, one definition, or another definition would be a kind of consciousness. So for the modern Theravada interpretation, they won't go into detail. So again, it's still very subjective to interpretation. Yeah. So I won't go into detail. But again, for the Tibetan tradition, they will call this the mind-created body, or they call it the bardo. So these are the various schools' interpretation. All right, so hopefully that I'm going to just share whatever I know. I know it's not clear enough an answer. All right, and any other questions? Somebody raised their hand or something?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I have one. This precept and practice clinging, is it rites and rituals?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so when a person clings to an identity, a personality, then they will have certain rites and rituals. They have certain observances. For example, if I say I am a Chinese, so that is a personality, right? So a Chinese will behave in a certain manner. They use chopsticks, or Chinese New Year, they decorate the house in red color and whatever not. So these are certain rituals associated with that personality, right? So if same thing, if you go to a different environment because of different contact, right? For example, if let's say I meet my parents, for example, if I think of my parents now, or I see my parents, so based on my contact from my senses, then a different personality will appear. Then I become a child. So I will behave certain behavior that is to be like a child towards a parent. And if let's say you are a parent, and if you meet your child, then you must behave like a parent towards your child, or something like that. So different contact will result in different personality, right? So that is called personality view. So normally when a person cling to this personality, then very hard, yeah? Then they'll cause suffering, because this changes all the time. So when let's say this COVID, right? COVID comes, some people's livelihood get affected, right? Maybe all the while, no, for example, this person's personality, maybe they are manager of a company, for example. And because of COVID, maybe they're out of business, then he has to change job or change position. Then he cannot take it, suffering, because he's been that position for so many years, right? So when they change, cannot take it. So this is clinging on to personality. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. Okay, then there's another question. What is the difference between clinging and craving? Okay, craving is the initial reaction. Craving is the result. Right, so when we face our sense stimuli from seeing, smelling, tasting, whatever, and we react with greed or hatred, so that is craving. And if it stays longer for maybe longer than 1 second, then that is clinging. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. I do not know how long does it constitute clinging, right? For me, it's more than 1 second, that will be clinging. Okay, you're welcome. Then there's another question. When we practice the 5 precepts, is it also considered clinging? Okay, very good. Clinging to the precepts. Okay, so this one has to do with interpretation, right? Interpretation. So some people, when they see, do not cling to precept and practice, then don't observe precept lah. No, I can go and drink beer and go and have work already, right? So no. A lot of times, I think it's got to do with translation. Some places they translate as rites and rituals. I would prefer that translation because if you mention precept and practice, that would be a bit of headache, right? Okay, there are cases where people hold on to certain precept too strictly that goes against the practice, goes against the how do you call it? How do you call it? There are certain contexts which you may, for example, need to. Some people say, tell maybe white lie. Let's say a person is dying already at the deathbed, last moment, few moments of death. They say, please promise me you must do this. You cannot say, I cannot promise you. He's about to die. You just, okay, I will try my best. Or say something nice to make him happy and pass away in peace, something like that along these lines. So there are certain things a person needs to be flexible, right? But not to the extent of totally not observing the precept. So there is a certain moderation, right? So the whole idea is to practice the precept the middle way, right? The middle way. So for example, when we talk about not killing, if a person is too over paranoid, over compulsive, right? Then they're so afraid, everything, don't want to move, don't want to walk, don't want to do any task, don't want to sweep the floor, don't want to mop the floor. They're afraid of killing certain things. So this is to the extreme. This is over clinging, right? Over clinging. So hopefully that gives some hint to what is this moderation. All right. Okay, then the next one, how to stop this process to rebirth again and again. Okay, yeah, good question from Sally. So this is actually same as a Four Noble Truth, right? The Eightfold Path is to have this right thought, which is the opposite of desire. So when a person practices non-greed and non-hatred, that is actually overcoming desire. So you're actually executing the plan that stopping this cycle. Right, so hopefully that answers the question. Okay, I know this is Hoai Hong's question mark, right? Okay, so temporarily we just take it as rites and ritual. Yeah, so precepts and practice, right, may not be the 5 precepts, right? May not be the 5 precepts when they talk about clinging to precepts and practices, because there are many kinds of precepts and practices, may not be the 5 precepts. And even if it is a 5 precepts, then again, if a person overdo it, that means if they go against the spirit, that means they don't check the intention. Normally, when a person talk about breaking the precepts, there's a few criteria. First is intention. For example, do you have the hatred, aversion to kill, for example, right? Then the second criteria is you must know the object. Is it a person or is it the animal? If it is just, let's say, a video game character, it's a fake person, it's not real. So there's no killing involved, right? But the essence is you're still creating the hatred, right? Okay, so there's a second criteria. You must know the object. And number 3, you have to execute out the plan. You have to execute out the plan. Either you physically, kill the being yourself, or you ask someone to kill the being. So that is executing. And number 4, the being has to result in death. So these are the 4 criteria, at least if I remember correctly, at least, yeah, there are 4. So if a person fulfill these 4 criteria, then they are breaking the precept of killing. Right? So if a person hold on to the precept, they they don't want to kill, they wear a hazmat suit and don't want to breathe in and take in any form of microorganisms, then I think that would be a bit, for me, like a bit too extreme. A bit too extreme, right? When we take something, we don't intentionally kill, right? When we eat something, we don't intentionally kill those microorganisms, right? So hopefully that answers your question. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
For this killing, I think there's somewhere in the sutta that something smaller than a bed bug or something is okay, right?
I haven't came across this sutta before. Yeah.
I thought I read it
because
somewhere.
when the Buddha is scooped a handful of water, he said there are 84,000 sentient beings inside. So yeah, so they are sentient beings. All right, so you're welcome.
Nobody want to be wise,
Yeah, somebody asked a question. Can you repeat the point on view clinging? Is it possible of the right view? Is it possible the same as factor or doubt? Okay, so if a person clings to certain view that result in suffering, that would be wrong view. Any view that result in suffering is wrong view. And any view that results in calm and peace, that is right view. Simple and short. So to be more technical, you can further expand on this Kalama Sutta. Very simple. If a person believes in afterlife, right, or if a person don't believe in afterlife, if a person believe in karma or don't believe in karma, as long as they do good, they're happy, that's fine. Right? That is the moral of the story. And if you want to expand further, then you can look into this Brahma Jala Sutta, the 62 net of views, all kinds of views in the religious world, whether there's afterlife, no afterlife, there's past life, no past life, whether the afterlife is eternal suffering or is it eternal happiness, whatever view you have, as long as you still have greed and hatred and still have stress and suffering, then the Buddha said that is wrong view. So even if you believe in past life, that is also a wrong view if you still have suffering. Yeah. Okay, so could you please explain further on the becoming as its condition? Okay, because of clinging, then there will be becoming. When there is greed, then you cling, then you become. And you desire something. Okay, so I'll give explanation. It's a bit like this personality view. Not personality view. Personality view is something lesser. It's more like the sense of self. Why do you feel you are you? Right? So if a person, for example, they enjoy, let's say, watching a movie, then at that point of time, you are a movie goer. Movie goer, right? You watch a movie, you're a movie goer. So if you sit down there and enjoy the film, then you become the audience. So you have certain experiences. So let's say you watch certain actor or actresses play the film, the protagonist of the film, right? The main character. So whatever the main character goes through, whether they are the good character or bad character, you feel up and down for them. Agree? Even if they are the bad guy, but they are the main character, you feel up and down for them. It's nothing to do with you, they are on the screen. You are you, but they are on the screen. And somehow it's a fake show, it's not real. But you get emotionally affected by whatever is happening on the screen. So there's a scientific experiment. They put two hands. One is your real hand, and one is a dummy, a fake hand. Then they put a plyboard, so you cannot see your hand. You can only see the dummy hand. So there's a person to do the control experiment. So this person will use a brush or a feather to tickle both hands. So the same finger, right? The pinky finger, you tickle, and you also tickle the dummy hand simultaneously, and tickle the thumb, tickle whatever. So they'll do the same thing to make you feel as though the dummy hand is your own hand. So eventually he'll take a hammer and hit the dummy hand. And then those people taking the experiment, they all get very shocked, very, very upset, very afraid of what's going to happen to the dummy hand. It's not their hand. It's not real, no nervous system. But because we are so engrossed, there is clinging. There is clinging. So that dummy hand becomes your hand. So it is a mental programming. Whatever we view, see, hear, think, taste, smell, and touch, over some time, maybe more than 1 second, then it will be associated with the self. Become my shirt, my house, my car, my property, my this, my that. Initially, it wasn't yours. But over time, you see it for 1 second only, it become associated with the self. So this is the issue. Right? So this is it becomes part of you. So at least hopefully that answers the question, right? Okay. Any other questions?
Bhante, can you explain a little bit on formless becoming? What does that mean?
Oh, it's the same thing. So like when we are experiencing the sensual world without jhanas, right? So these are the 6 senses, the sensual becoming. So we are associated, this become us, my experience, my seeing, my hearing, my tasting. So this is the becoming, sensual becoming. So if a person enter different levels of concentration, this is my experience, my calmness, my peace. So something like that, along these lines. So whatever level of concentration, it will, if you do it with clinging, then it will be associated with the self. So that's why when the Buddha gave instruction on the whatever concentration he teaches, he included impermanence in the formula. So even in the Anapanasati, you also include impermanence. Even the jhanas which he teach in the jhana suttas, he also included impermanence because must reduce the clinging so that the person won't be attached too much. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, any other questions? Oh yeah, that's one. Is our human ego due to clinging? Yes. The ego is the sense of self, so that is the becoming part. Yeah. So from craving, conditions clinging, which conditions becoming. Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
There's another question from Dean in the chat room.
All right. Can expound more about sanya, perceptions, how memories of oneself, identity, and the defining moment or action mechanism that creates more delusion or dukkha. What can we do to break this automatic momentum that keeps us in samsara? Right? Thank you, Venerable Bhante. Okay, same thing. Reduce greed and hatred. So we are replacing perception with right thought, right thinking. So when we have right perception, we are actually reducing this desire. Right, so hopefully that answers your question. Thoughts of non-greed and non-hatred, yeah? So there's interesting Zen example. There's a Zen poet. He wrote, 看山是山, see mountains as mountains. That's the first verse he wrote. Then the second verse, when he started to learn Buddhism, learn Zen, he said, see mountains as not mountains. 看山不是山. And eventually, the third verse, 看山是山. Eventually, when he understood the Dhamma, understood Zen, and mountains are again mountains. So it's like, initially when I read it, it's like, what are you talking about? Right? So initially, our perception, we see things normally. Right? Mountains are mountains. So these mountains so majestic, so beautiful, the scenery so nice. So we see things with regard to greed and hatred, with desire, with sensuality. So this is a kind of perception, right? So when we start to learn Buddhism, then the different teachers will give you different meditation objects or different contemplation, which is different kind of perception. Maybe see mountains as the four elements, or see mountains as impermanent, see mountains as empty, whatever it is. So see mountains as not mountains. This is to reduce your desire. So eventually, when, let's say, a person achieves his goal, accomplishes, totally free, then he doesn't need to put in the effort anymore. So the mind is free. So mountains are again mountains. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. All right, okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? Today, lots of questions.
There's another one on the chat.
Okay, all right. Where is it?
From Dean, to cultivate right view and remain in constant mindfulness.
Oh, that's a reply. Yeah, it's not a question. Okay. If there's, how about the Facebook comments?
It seems very quiet from Facebook.
Okay, all right. So if there's no question, then we have a break. All right, 5-minute break. So see you at, now it's 9:23. So I see you at 9:28. Then we come back with the guided meditation. Hopefully we can do something about it. Okay, so see you all back later. All right, welcome back to the guided meditation session. So today's theme is on dependent origination. So it'll be a very mouthful if I were to describe the whole 12 links in every phase of the meditation. So I'll try my best and see whatever you can take away. All right, so we're going to start off with sitting upright. So hopefully everyone is comfortable and your muscles are relaxed. Make sure your body is not tensed. And once we're ready, we can close our eyes. So we're trying to understand dependent origination with regard to various cognitive processes, cognitive functions. So the first one is got to do with visualization. Right, so if we were to visualize in our mind, right? The parts of our body, for example, our hair. So an untrained person will definitely cling. Our normal reaction, this is my hair, right? If you imagine like looking at the mirror, looking at yourself in your mind, so whatever you see on the body, then is my body, my hair. So to reduce this clinging, and we apply right thought, right? So what we are going to do is first have this wish. May all this hair be well and happy. So the phrasing of your sentence is important. Don't go and say, may my hair be well and happy. No. Once you say my hair, then it becomes becoming. So it doesn't sever this greed above the becoming part. So all the hairs from head to toe, may they be well and happy. And we are going to bring in the other thought, which is non-greed, and we are going to think of impermanence. So all these hairs that you visualize, they go through birth and death. So you fast forward the aging process, right? They grow long, they get dirty, oily, sweaty, they turn white, they crack, and they drop off. Every day there's lots and lots of hair falling off. So if you do it correctly, then there's a transition from clinging to non-clinging would result in certain surge of happiness. And then we are going to think of the next part of the body, which are your nails, your fingernails and your toenails. So basically, observe your mind, whether the attachment comes back again, right? So this is the mind door consciousness. You're imagining your body. So you're visualizing your nails. Then does the sense of I come back? It's my nails, yeah? And then we apply the same thing, wish all the nails well and happy. And then fingernails and toenails. And all these nails are subject to birth and death. So they grow long, they collect dirt. And they crack. go through wear and tear. They discolor. And every time you scratch on something, some of the dead cells, they fall off. Then you observe, see whether there's any transition between a clinging mind and a non-clinging mind. So the common wrong view that all of us have, that this is my body, sense of self is there. Or this body will be young forever, will be healthy forever. So we deliberately think of this birth and death. And we are going to now think or visualize the teeth, or the teeth in your mouth. And wish all the teeth well and happy. Observe any changes. Does the clinging come back? Or can you remain detached? Right, all the upper rows of teeth and lower rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. And next we are going to think of the birth and death. All the teeth are subject to birth, aging, decay and passing away. They change in shape and size. They get dirty, they discolor, turn yellow, turn brown, turn black. They decay, have tooth cavities, they get shaky, and they fall off. And next up, we are going to think of the skin that surrounds the whole body. Then you check whether the clinging comes back. Is this my skin? Right, and we are going to wish all the skin well and happy from head to toe. So this is a very micro, right? Observing of the forward and reverse order using the dependent origination. And once we have loving kindness towards the skin, then we're going to add impermanence, the birth and death. So all the skin will grow old, they wrinkle, they get oily, sweaty, dirty, they crack when it's dry, and sometimes they're full of skin problems, skin diseases, rashes, boils, pimples, whatever it is. And the dead skin fall off every day. Lots of dead skin fall off. And then we can also observe, the sense of ego, right? Is it reduced or is it increased? So there's a correlation between desire, clinging, and the ego. Now we are going to change to a different cognitive process. We are going to feel the breath. So there's no need to visualize, right? So we're just like focusing on one small point and below the nostril, above the upper lip, to feel the in and out breathing. So basically we're isolating the attention or restricting the attention to one small spot. And below the nostril, don't have to feel the lungs, your windpipe, or your diaphragm, just the surface of the skin where the air comes in and out of your nostrils. So same thing, once we place attention to a new contact, will there arise in greed and clinging? So we're going to watch our breath. When we inhale and exhale, let it be our natural breathing, no need to control the breath. So to reduce the clinging, then we apply the same thing, have loving kindness to the breath. Whenever there's inhalation, we wish the breath well. Exhalation, we wish the breath happy. Make friends with the breath. If we don't do this and we try to fix the mind or force the mind, then this is clinging, right? Clinging that results in suffering. So the important step is always to make friends with the sense contact, and loving kindness. And when the mind is calmed down, then we can introduce the other thought, which is the impermanence of the breath, to reduce greed. So when we breathe in and out, there's a very micro processes of birth and death taking place. Right? We talk about the forming of 4 elements or forming of the 5 aggregates. That is birth. So what takes place, right? What kind of birth takes place? So we talk about the 4 elements. There are 4 categories of sensations. Earth element represents any hard and soft sensations when you breathe in and out. If there's any change in the density of the air, then that is the birth and death of the earth element. And the fire is the hot and cold. And if you breathe in and out, any change in temperature, that is the birth and death of the fire element. And wind is the fast and slow movements. So if there's any change in your breathing rate, that is the birth and death of the wind element. And water is the humidity, moist or dry. So every time there's a change of sensation, there's a change of perception. You call it a new name. You call it a hot or cold or warm or soft or hard. Right? All these are different labels, different perception, different feelings, whether you find it pleasant or unpleasant. And different contact, different when breathe in and out, although its bodily contact is different, changing all the time. And the 5 aggregates appear and disappear all the time when we breathe in and out. Whenever there's a change in the elements, there's change in the 5 aggregates. So we keep observing the birth and death of the 5 aggregates or the 4 elements until the mind, you can find the mind settling, right? If the more we think of impermanence, the less we cling. So in meditation, the right effort is important, not in the forceful kind of effort, but as in the consistent, the frequency, repetition kind of effort. So once we stop the right thinking, then the clinging will come back, or the wrong thinking will come. Once we continue non-stop to have this right thinking, that is the right effort, and desire and clinging will reduce. due to the lack of time, we won't go through the different levels of concentration. So we are going to try out a different cognitive function, which is the loving kindness. Right, so we are going to radiate this loving kindness in front. And we're going to wish all beings in front well and happy. So when we think of beings in front, will there be clinging? So to practice loving kindness with wisdom also has to add in this impermanence. So radiate this attention in front. Can we feel the impermanence of the aggregates? Or if, let's say, you visualize beings in front, then you need to think of them decaying. They will go through this birth and death. Then we come back to ourselves, and we are going to wish all beings behind well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings on the left well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings on the right well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings above well and happy. And we come back to ourselves, and we wish all beings below well and happy. And we come back to ourselves. Right, this time we fill the whole body with loving kindness. May this entire body be well and happy. And eventually we are radiating this loving kindness. Or before we radiate this loving kindness, do check when we think of the body, is there still clinging, the sense of self? And how to detach. Wherever your attention is placed, be it internally or externally, large area or small area, there's two options. Either you do it wrongly or correctly. So you do it with clinging or detachment. And we are now going to radiate this loving kindness in all the directions, above, below, and all across, starting to fill your house. May all beings at home be well and happy. And then we can extend to the neighborhood. May all beings in the neighborhood be well and happy. And we can extend the loving kindness to the entire country. May all beings in your country be well and happy. And we can extend the loving kindness to the entire planet. May all beings on earth be well and happy. So as we wish for world peace, make sure the mind also has inner peace. Yeah, that means no clinging. And eventually we are going to radiate loving kindness to all beings in the universe. May all beings be well and happy. So you try to maintain this loving kindness as long as possible. Just another reminder before we conclude the meditation from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. If a person were to maintain this boundless loving kindness, be it standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, then this is the highest conduct. So with that in mind, we can formally end the meditation, gently open our eyes, but mentally, still meditating, still mindful. All right, so if you want to take the theme of dependent origination, then you can observe, how clinging arises and how does practicing the Eightfold Path, right thought, reduce this clinging. All right, so yep, that's the end of the session for today. Any other questions? Wei Wen, yes.
Bhante, I have a question about like why does the not clinging, right? Like when we tell ourselves this nail hair is not ours, and then if we do it correctly, then we feel this unclinging. But then like sometimes when we feel angry and then we tell ourselves to let go, the mind is like telling itself to let go, but then the anger is still there. Like, why is there a difference?
Because anger is a desire, so you need to use loving kindness to reduce that desire first, then can let go. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Does that make sense?
Is the term letting go and unclinging the same, or
Yeah. The same. Yeah.
okay? Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay. Welcome. Any other questions? Okay. If there's no questions, then we can end the session. Any announcements?
Announcement. Okay. Can you lead in the dedication of Mary?
Oh, there's a question from Jay. If we want to detach, why do we wish our teeth, skin, etc. to be well and happy? What is the wish for? It's a loving kindness. Right? Because desire actually is this greed, hatred, and delusion. These three things. So if we reduce aversion, we are reducing desire. We are reduce So use loving kindness to reduce aversion, which is reducing desire. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now we do the dedication of merits.
Before that, can I ask something? This is
Yeah.
out of the scope today. It's just I just need some advice. My friend's mother just went for operation to remove tongue, and she's trying to meditate, but she says a lot of disturbances. She sees suffering, like things come and disturb her, and sometimes she sees a light which is very pleasant. So, what advice can we give her?
Okay. Yeah. So I must see what kind of object she's using for meditation. Yeah. So maybe a mantra if she's she believes in what's her belief? What's her faith?
Theravadian, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you can ask her to recollect the Buddha, right? So short Buddha mantra can help. Think of the Buddha or Buddha qualities, right? So because the lung removed, very hard to watch the breath. Yeah, sometimes they have all the pipe and all those things in. So using mantra would be more appropriate. So it's a mental chanting. Don't have to recite through the mouth. Yeah. So it won't be tiresome for her.
Metta, will metta be appropriate for her?
Yeah, metta also can help. Yeah. So wish all beings well and happy. So she has to keep on thinking, generating that thought.
Okay, thank you, Sadhu.
Okay, right. All right, so we are going to dedicate merits. Akasata Bhumata Devanaga Mahidika Punyang Tang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Loka Sasanang Etavata Jamhehi Sampada Punya Sampadang Sabe Deva Sabe Bhuta Sabe Sata Anumodantu Sabha Sabhati Siddhya. Transference of merits to departed. Idam me nyatina hotu, sukita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatina hotu, Sukita hontu nyatayo. Idame nyatina hotu. Sukita hontu nyatayo. And aspiration, imina punya kamena, ame bala samagamo, sata samagamo hotu, yava nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay.
All right.
So as we mentioned at the beginning of the talk, we are having a meditation retreat on the 21st and the 22nd of November. To keep this in your calendar. Thank you, Bhante, and everyone. Good night.
Okay, good night.